Hey, Soul Stories fam. We've got a swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in and tell us, what city are you watching from? The airport loudspeaker echoed with its familiar monotone. International flight from Copenhagen has just landed at Gate 17. Elena Carter pulled her suitcase behind her, stepping out of immigration with the weariness of someone who had just endured more than 10 hours of intercontinental travel. At 34, she was an architect who had already made a name for herself with her eco-friendly projects. Just recently, she won an international award for sustainable design in Denmark. Today was supposed to be a day of joy, returning home in triumph, carrying the pride of her career. But her steps were unbearably heavy. On her phone screen, the message from Marcus, the man she had loved for nearly 2 years, still glowed. "I'll be waiting in the parking lot. No need to call." "Welcome home, darling." Elena allowed herself a faint smile when she read it again, fragile as a thread. She was about to head toward the exit when she froze. From the nearby lounge, a deep, familiar voice drifted to her ears. Marcus. His back was turned to her, phone pressed close, his voice lowered to a mix of whisper and excitement. "Yes, baby. I just got another transfer from Elena." "Right, more than 40,000. Don't worry, everything's still on track. The startup is just waiting for the launch. We're going to have it all." Elena went numb. Her whole body stiffened, as though an icy current ran down her spine. "Baby." That word sliced through her ears. Number. Impossible. Marcus. The man who had sworn to stand by her through every challenge. The man she had trusted so much she poured all her savings into his so-called startup project. She forced herself to hold her breath, retreating one slow step at a time. Her heart pounded wildly, each beat like a hammer strike. Every word he spoke shattered inside her head like glass shards. Transfer from Elena. Everything on track. Everything but her. In that instant, even the strongest structures she had ever designed collapsed in her mind. Elena lowered her head, pulled out her phone, and with trembling fingers quickly typed a message. "Marcus, something urgent came up at work." "You don't need to pick me up." She sent it without waiting for a reply. Dragging her suitcase through the crowd, she hurried to the parking lot, searching for the most secluded corner. Her car sat quietly under the dim yellow light. Elena slipped into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and let go of everything. Her heavy breaths broke into strangled sobs. Mascara streaked down her cheeks in messy black trails. She collapsed against the steering wheel, shoulders trembling. A bitter question repeated in her mind. I can design buildings strong enough to stand for centuries. So how could I let my heart collapse so easily? Outside, cars continued to flow by, and people embraced each other in warm reunions. And she, Elena Carter, the woman who had once stood confidently on an international stage under the spotlight, was now nothing more than a betrayed woman, lost in a cold, desolate parking lot. She bit down on her lip, forcing the tears to stop. But the harder she tried, the more they came. Then 3 gentle knocks sounded on the window. Elena jolted upright, looking up. The yellow glow of the lot's lamp revealed the face of a stranger. He was about 40, tall, composed, in a dark overcoat. His deep-set eyes carried a sternness, but no threat. He spoke softly through the misted glass. "Don't be afraid. I just want to say a few words." Elena hesitated, her heart still racing, but instinct told her he wasn't dangerous. She rolled the window down a small crack. The man gave a slight nod, pulled a business card from his coat pocket, and held it out. His voice was low, steady. "My name is Michael Davies, financial investigator. I was in the airport lounge and overheard Marcus's call. Believe me, you're the victim of a fraud scheme." Elena froze. Michael didn't elaborate. His eyes carried the urgency of someone who had seen this too many times. He continued, "You're not the first. If you want justice, call me." He slipped the card through the gap, then stepped back, not waiting for her answer. A courteous nod and he turned away, his figure fading into the misty lot. Elena looked down at her hand. A plain white card, only black letters. Michael Davies, financial fraud investigator. A phone number. No flourish. No slogan. Her chest tightened. She clenched the card in her trembling hand. The tears hadn't stopped, but beneath the pain, something stirred, Maybe not hope, but a reminder that she wasn't entirely alone. Elena leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes. The world outside still bustled on, but inside the small car, everything stood still, only her pounding heart, and one haunting question remained. What will I do with this truth that just came crashing down? Elena Carter's apartment sat on the 7th floor of an old building. No ocean view, no flower-filled balcony, just a mess of blueprints scattered across the table, the chairs, even the floor. She pushed the door open and kicked off her heels. They tumbled across the room like two drunkards collapsing in the street. Dropping onto the sofa with a thud, she left her suitcase abandoned by the doorway. The yellow lamplight fell across unfinished designs. A green building with a roof of climbing plants, a community cultural center powered by solar energy, even a model of an eco-friendly wooden bridge she had dreamed of for a whole year. Elena looked at them, and all she wanted was to grab a pen and scrawl in huge letters, "Failed." She laughed, the sound crinkling like paper being crushed. Well, that's rich. I can design earthquake-resistant buildings, and yet I let my heart fracture because of one guy in a white shirt in a gray tie. Marcus. Just the name made her stomach churn as if she had downed a bucket of syrup. She remembered the early days. Marcus had once come to look over her drawings, nodding like an investor with vision. His voice was firm, convincing. You have talent. Your ideas will change the real estate industry. With funding, I believe we could make history. At that word, Elena had smiled so wide her cheeks hurt. She hadn't just handed him her drawings. She had given him her trust. And her savings, every penny she had scraped together by living on instant noodles through countless deadlines. By refusing that trip to Italy her friends begged her to take. By spending weekends fine-tuning every small detail of her projects. Now it all felt like a half-built tower collapsing from a missing foundation. She had called Marcus countless times, but he never answered. Her phone buzzed. Elena wiped her tears and picked it up. Marcus, I'm in a meeting. Talk later. Elena let out a dry laugh, mascara still smudged on her eyelids. Oh, the classic copy-paste line. I've read that at least 20 times. Every time I thought you were in a meeting with a CEO, it turns out you were meeting with baby. She tossed the phone onto the sofa. It bounced and fell to the floor. Picking it up again, she muttered, Never trust a man in a white shirt. Meetings, my ass. The only thing they're good at is meeting over ways to steal your money. She dragged herself to her desk. On it, the cardboard model of a building stood unfinished. Elena sighed, then took a pen and scribbled random strokes across it. Glass windows. Cracked. The roof. Collapsed. People fleeing in chaos. And right in front of the entrance, she sketched Marcus, his tie dangling like a rope, hanging midair as if in the middle of one of his meetings. Tilting her head back, she burst into laughter, alone. Yep, that's the blueprint of my life. Shattered. But at least this time, it looks artistic. Her eyes fell on the business card lying on the desk. Michael Davies, financial fraud investigator. She picked it up, turned it over in her hand. A small, simple card in black and white. No flashy logos. No slogans like Marcus's favorite. For your sustainable future. Elena smirked. This guy definitely never studied marketing. But then Michael's words from earlier echoed in her mind. You're the victim. If you want justice, call me. Victim. The word pierced her chest. She had never thought of herself as Elena Carter, an architect with international awards, someone who could present in 3 languages and make entire juries nod in approval as a victim. She sighed and put the card down, then picked it up again, then set it down once more. Should I call? If I do, it's basically admitting I was stupid. If I don't, then I accept losing my money, my love, and my faith. Perfect. The apartment stayed silent. Only the ticking of the clock mocked her like laughter. Elena stood and opened the fridge. Inside, half a carton of milk, a shriveled lemon, and an open bottle of red wine. All right then. Tonight we drink to architect Elena Carter. She poured herself a full glass, raised it high. Cheers to shattered blueprints. The wine went down with a hoarse laugh, a sound that was both sad and strangely funny. She sank to the floor, leaning against the sofa, wine glass in hand, the business card right there on the table in front of her. Staring at it, she finally whispered, "Michael Davies. Sounds like a detective from a TV show. Who knows, maybe I'm about to play the lead role." Then she laughed again, her smile trembling, tears mixing in. The room was still cluttered with blueprints, but this time, instead of seeing only failure, Elena sensed the faint stir of a beginning hidden behind that small card. Elena's small apartment lay in the dim golden glow of the desk lamp. The clock was nearing 1 a.m., yet she lay on the sofa, eyes wide open, her heart racing like it was running a marathon. On the coffee table sat the business card Michael Davies had left her. That little piece of paper looked so small, and yet felt as heavy as an entire building. She had been staring at it for 2 hours. Countless times she thought of dialing, only to put the phone down again. But every time the screen lit up, whether from a work email or midnight pizza ad, her chest clenched tighter. Finally, Elena sat up abruptly. "Screw it, just call. Worst case, he just doesn't pick up." Her fingers trembled as she dialed. After 3 rings, a hoarse male voice answered, clearly woken from sleep, but steady nonetheless. "Hello, Michael Davies." Elena hesitated. I'm sorry for calling so late. This is Elena Carter. At the airport, you gave me your card." A brief silence, then Michael's voice came, calm and plain, without even a trace of pity. "I remember. You called at the right time. You can't sleep, can you?" Elena sniffed, mascara from the afternoon still leaving faint shadows in the mirror. "What are you, psychic?" "No, I just know that looks too good. People who've just discovered they've been conned don't sleep much at night." The words made Elena's throat tighten. She didn't want to hear that she was conned. But Michael spoke bluntly, short, without frills. "I'd like to meet you. Tomorrow morning, can you? A cafe near the airport. Bring every transfer record you have." Elena drew in a deep breath. She wasn't sure she had the courage, but her mouth answered on its own. "Okay, tomorrow morning." After hanging up, she sat still for a long moment, then let out a shaky laugh. "God, I just agreed to meet some stranger tomorrow and bring along all my financial records. Elena, really?" The next morning, the little cafe near the airport buzzed with travelers coming and going. Elena walked in clutching a folder of documents tight to her chest, as though it were armor. Michael was already there, wearing a dark shirt and holding a plain black coffee. No fancy latte, no artful foam, just black, no sugar. He nodded instead of greeting. "Thanks for coming." Elena sat down, fumbling to place the folder on the table. I don't even know where to start." Michael tilted his head, voice steady. "Start with the transfers." Elena pulled out every receipt, every bank statement. Her hands shook so badly that a few slipped to the floor. Michael picked them up, arranged them neatly, and began to read. She watched silently as his eyes moved quickly but precisely, as though reading was as natural to him as reading CAD blueprints was to her. After a few minutes, Michael looked up. "You transferred a total of $85,000 over 3 months, and the recipient doesn't exist." Elena went cold. "What do you mean?" He slid a folder of photos and old case files across the table. He pointed to one name printed in bold, Edward Thompson. "This is the real name of the man you know as Marcus." Elena felt her heart short-circuit. Each photo, each line of text pounded into her like a hammer. Edward Thompson, a financial con artist known for targeting accomplished women, including accountants, lawyers, and now an architect. A dry laugh escaped her. "Perfect. I belong in the ranks of successful women, and the most idiotic." Michael didn't smile. He looked her straight in the eye, his voice even and firm. "Don't say that. Being good with numbers doesn't mean being good with the heart." Elena blinked, startled. "You can design a building that's earthquake-resistant, energy-efficient, and solid. But the heart, it doesn't follow any blueprint. Don't blame yourself for trusting the wrong person." For a moment, Elena saw in his eyes the raw truth she had never dared speak aloud. Marcus hadn't just stolen her money. He had stolen the belief that someone like her, always strong, calculating, precise, could safely lean on someone else. Her hands tightened around the rim of her hot cocoa. Her voice cracked. I hate this feeling. I hate myself for believing. Michael nodded slowly. I know. But what matters isn't how you fall. It's how you stand back up. Elena lifted her gaze, meeting those unwavering eyes. Not a hint of pity, only a reminder. Strangely, it made her feel lighter. So what's the next step? She asked, voice trembling, but resolute. Michael opened his case, pulling out a thick folder. I'll help you prepare a case file. And if you agree, we'll work with the authorities. I've been tracking Thompson for a while. This time, with your evidence, he might not get away. Elena stared at the documents spread across the table. For the first time, amidst the rubble of her shattered blueprint of love, she felt she could start sketching something new. She exhaled, then nodded. Okay, but you have to promise no finance jargon overload. I'm just an architect. The corner of Michael's mouth lifted perhaps for the first time that morning. Deal, I'll speak human. Elena laughed, tears mixing in. And right there in the busy airport cafe, a new line appeared on her broken blueprint. The next morning, Elena woke with a strange feeling. Normally, after a sleepless night, she would shuffle around like a zombie, gulping down black coffee so strong it could probably hold up bricks. But today, though her eyes were swollen, she felt a faint glimmer of light inside. Perhaps it was because of the folder Michael had left for her the night before. Maybe it was because, for the first time, she didn't feel completely alone. She opened her laptop and pulled up her bank emails. The transfers sat there glaring at her, each number like loose bricks she had stacked herself into what she thought was a solid house of love. Now that the house had collapsed. But instead of crying, Elena copied them all into a file and titled it clearly, Evidence, Edward Thompson, Marcus.docs. All right, Marcus, if you want to play the fake architect, then I'll fight back with the real blueprints. That afternoon, she met Michael at his small office near the courthouse. The place was far from fancy. Plain white walls, a squeaky swivel chair, a desk piled high with files. Beside his laptop sat an old mug printed with the words, Numbers never lie. Michael greeted her with the same familiar nod. No, sorry you had to go through this, or you look exhausted like everyone else. He simply asked, Did you bring the files? Elena handed him the folder, lifting her chin slightly. Here. Evidence compiled by yours truly. Just think of me as your temporary partner. Michael sat down and opened each document. His eyes darted quickly, jotting down figures. Elena sat across from him, arms crossed, unable to resist a jab. You look exactly like a doctor reading heart scans. Michael replied without missing a beat. Not the same. When I'm done reading, I can actually save wallets. Elena burst out laughing, nearly dropping her pen. She realized it had been a long time since she had laughed so freely. In the following days, the two of them worked like a team. Michael guided her through the process of filing the lawsuit, submitting it to the court, and contacting lawyers. He didn't say much, but every word was short, clear, and easy to follow. Not once did Elena feel manipulated or looked down upon. Meanwhile, she threw herself into a new project, redesigning an old community housing block in the suburbs. The place, once a temporary shelter for immigrant families, had deteriorated badly. The city had opened bids and Elena's firm had a chance. She spread her sketches across the table, a ruler in hand, and drew the first lines. Old brick walls would be replaced with insulated green walls, leaky roofs with solar panels, a playground for children built with recycled materials. As her hand moved, her mind kept comparing. Architecture was like love. If the foundation wasn't solid, even the smallest tremor could bring it all down. Marcus had never given her that foundation. He had only built walls out of promises. Elena bit her lip, pressing her pencil harder. This time she wanted to build something truly lasting. Michael sometimes stopped by the studio, carrying black coffee and his quiet, observant demeanor. He would stand with arms crossed, watching her sketch for long stretches, before suddenly commenting, You're shading this corner too much. Elena arched an eyebrow. And what, are you an architect now? No, but I look at blueprints the same way I look at numbers. Any corner that gets too much emphasis usually means there's an issue. Elena sighed, setting her pencil down. Fine, financial detective. You caught me. This is the part I'm obsessed with, the foundation. Michael stayed quiet for a moment, then nodded. At least with this building, you get to choose what foundation to lay. Nobody can fool you here. Elena gave a half smile, warmth flickering inside. He never gave empty comfort. He just said exactly what she needed to hear. One evening after they'd submitted a stack of legal documents, Elena and Michael sat in a fast food joint near the courthouse. Red plastic tables, soggy burgers, greasy fries. It was anything but romantic, but to Elena, it felt more real than all the candlelit dinners and wine with Marcus ever had. "Hey, Michael," she said around a mouthful of fries, her words muffled. "Do you really think I can win this case?" "I believe in numbers, and I believe in people who get back up after falling." His answer made Elena pause. She looked at him with those deep brown eyes, not burning with melodramatic passion, but holding something rarer. Certainty. She laughed softly. "You really are the opposite of Marcus." He spoke as if he were reading a marketing script. "You talk like you're reading an indictment." Michael smirked. "If I'm reading the indictment, then he'll pay the price." In that moment, Elena felt lighter. For the first time, she didn't feel like a victim anymore. She felt like part of the counterattack. That night, back in her small apartment, Elena tidied up the pile of unfinished blueprints. She added sticky notes, scribbling, "Solid foundation first, walls, doors, and roof after." Then she sat back and stared at the words. Just like the heart. Start rebuilding from the ground up. On the desk, Michael's business card still lay there. But it no longer looked like a last lifeline. It looked more like the first brick of a new foundation. As for Michael, he didn't say it aloud, but each time he watched Elena bent over her drawings, hands steady, eyes determined, he felt a surge of respect. He had once thought that people who'd been conned only wanted to hide, to escape. But Elena was different. She turned her pain into fuel. Late one night after she emailed her project update, Michael received a short message from her. "First blueprint done. Beautiful. Thanks for believing in me." Michael read it, smiling faintly. For the first time in years on the job, he realized he was relearning how to trust not in numbers, but in people. The article was published on Thursday morning, just as Elena was pouring herself a cup of coffee and preparing to start her day. The headline blared across the tabloid in oversized letters, "Award-winning green architect scammed in love and money. Even the talented can be victims." Beneath it was a photo snapped at the airport. Elena, mascara streaked, eyes swollen red. The malicious angle turned her exhaustion into the image of a woman shattered, stripped of everything. Elena collapsed into her chair, trembling. That was it. Her private pain had been turned into a public spectacle. At the office, the air felt different. No one dared ask her directly, but every step she took, she could hear the whispers. Poor thing. Who would have thought someone so smart could be duped? They say she lost all her savings, too. Each word pierced like a needle. What hurt Elena most wasn't that people thought she was weak, but that look of pity, the gaze that saw her as a bird with broken wings. A male colleague approached awkwardly, setting a cup of tea on her desk. "Take care of yourself, okay? Don't let this affect your work." Elena nodded her thanks, but her chest felt heavy. She didn't want to be anyone's poor victim. That afternoon, she had no choice but to attend the community meeting about the Maple Project. The hall was packed. The atmosphere was different than usual. People's eyes carried curiosity, but also pity. A neighbor whispered to another, "She was so talented and ended up with a con man." What a shame. Elena drew a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. She unrolled her plans, though her hands trembled slightly. The Maple redevelopment will use green materials and energy-efficient systems. We aim not only to rebuild walls, but to rebuild trust within this community. Her voice rang out, but then a man rose from the audience. "Sorry, but with what the paper printed this morning, can we really trust that you're in the right state of mind to handle this project properly?" The hall buzzed with murmurs. Elena's throat closed up. Just then a deep, steady voice cut through from the back. "Yes, you can. I do." Heads turned. Elena's eyes widened. Michael Davies, gray coat, calm presence, stood and began walking forward. He wasn't on the speaker list. She whispered, stunned, "You? Why are you here?" Michael leaned close, his words low. "Happened to be passing by." Saw the meeting, thought I'd listen. Then he turned to the crowd, his voice clear and firm. This morning's article presented no evidence, just sensational lines. I can confirm that Elena Carter has committed no crime. She is the victim and one of the finest architects this community has. Don't let pity become an excuse to diminish her. A wave of murmurs rose again, but this time many heads nodded in agreement. An elderly woman even smiled at Elena, her eyes glistening with tears. The moderator quickly tapped the microphone. Thank you. Let's return to the presentation. Elena swallowed hard and looked back at her plans. Strangely, this time her hands no longer shook. She pointed at the diagram. As I said, Maple isn't just about new housing. It's about building a foundation of trust for a community that is green, safe, and resilient. Her voice rang steady now. In that moment, the eyes that once held pity began to shift into genuine attention. When the meeting ended, several people approached her. Keep going, Mrs. Carter. We're behind you. Elena bowed her head in gratitude. She glanced at Michael. He stood with arms crossed, calm as ever. You really just happened to be here? She asked softly. Yes, but even if I'd had the choice, I'd still have said exactly the same thing. Elena laughed through misty eyes. For the first time in days, she felt she wasn't standing alone. That evening, back in her small apartment, Elena opened her notebook and wrote, There are times when I need blueprints to raise walls, but today someone stood as a column of support, and that was enough to keep me from collapsing. A week after the Maple community meeting, Elena's life began to slip back into something resembling normal. Normal in Seattle terms. Rain in the morning, sunshine at noon, rain again by evening. At work, people had stopped looking at her like a bird with broken wings. There were still a few curious glances, but most had shifted into respectful friendliness. Need us to carry those drawings, Carter? Coffee for you. Someone even left an anonymous note on her desk. Builders fix, they don't collapse. Elena laughed. The words were as sweet as marshmallows. She hesitated a few times, then finally texted Michael. Thank you for that day. He replied exactly 1 minute later. Don't mention it. Cafe near your office? I'll stop by with a few things. Precise, like legal text. The cafe sat on the corner, red brick walls, tall glass windows, a neon sign reading, Still brewing, still trying. Elena arrived early and chose a window seat. She ordered a mocha something, a little sweet to remind herself that life could still be kind, and opened her sketchbook. On the page was Maple's new playground, a rain cover, slip-proof hopscotch tiles, and a reading nook with low wooden chairs. Michael arrived right on time, wearing a gray coat and a dark shirt. He ordered a black coffee, no sugar. The barista scribbled on the lid, Microwave. Elena caught sight of it and nearly choked. Congratulations, she whispered as he sat down. From now on, you're officially Microwave. Michael glanced at the lid, shrugged. They once wrote motorcycle. This is an upgrade. He placed a manila envelope on the table. Filed copy of the complaint, case number for Edward Thompson. Includes a preliminary timeline, bank subpoena orders, and a scheduled meeting with the prosecutor's office. Elena touched the edge of the envelope as if it were a brick. Thank you. I thought this stuff took months. Sometimes. However, you organized the evidence well, so it was presented quickly. And, he paused, because I hate making victims wait. They sat in silence for a moment. Rain tapped against the window. You torture your taste buds with that coffee, Elena broke the quiet. After 10 years in IRSCI, everything tastes like black coffee, he replied, then looking out at the drizzle. Though some things still taste different. Like what? Like when someone stands up in a packed room and presents blueprints in a steady voice while everyone else is whispering pity. He said it as if he were reporting the weather, without embellishment. Elena gave a small laugh. That was me taking 3 deep breaths and telling myself, don't collapse in the middle of the room. You didn't collapse, Michael said quietly. That's the difference. Elena hesitated, then slid her sketchbook toward him. Maple. Look here. She pointed to the playground corner. A rain cover over the slide, requested by one little boy, and the wheelchair ramp is lower than the old standards, so, mister. Alvarez can push more easily. Michael tilted his head, studying. Your drawings have what numbers don't. Reasons. He looked up. Honestly, do you still believe in building after everything fell apart? Elena propped her chin on her hand. I think blueprints and love are the same. Foundations. Marcus built walls out of promises, but never poured the footing. One hit and it all crumbled. But Maple, I checked the soil myself, tested the water, and photographed every crack. I won't raise walls until the foundation is laid. So yes, I still believe, but this time, no one talks me into cutting corners. Michael smiled faintly. Good, because the rest of this case won't be quick. Thompson has layers of funds moving across states, a shell company in Delaware, prepaid cards cashed out in corner stores. The press will flare up again. I know, Elena said. I already survived the headline champion. They sipped. Elena hesitated, then asked, Can I ask you something? Why this line of work? Spending your days reading criminals' bank statements sounds soul-crushing. Michael turned his cup slowly, eyes on the rain. Because my family lost someone. Elena sat up straighter, instinctively about to apologize, then stopped herself. You don't have to if it's too much. It's fine. He set the cup down, voice steady but slower. My aunt was a nurse her whole life. Not wealthy, but she saved for retirement. A friend talked her into investing in a high-return fund. Sound familiar? Ponzi, Elena whispered. He nodded. When it collapsed, she lost everything. She kept working nights, but stress, blood pressure, then a stroke. She didn't make it. At her funeral, I decided to join IRSCI. I couldn't save her, but I could make people like him lose sleep. Elena stayed silent. She didn't offer pity. Instead, she pressed her pencil to the page and sketched a small square beside the playground. Corner of Grace. A quiet nook at Maple, she explained. Low roof, benches, climbing plants. A place to breathe. I think your aunt would have liked it. Michael read the words, gave the slightest nod as though in thanks. You don't need to apologize. I'm not apologizing, Elena smiled. I understand. A good silence passed between them. Outside, the rain softened. Michael pulled out a small notebook and opened it to the first page. Neat lines of tasks, timelines, and checkboxes. Elena pointed. Blueprint for an indictment. Call it a blueprint if you want, he said with a smile. Next steps, work with banks A and B, cross-check transfer logs, pull ATM footage, file for court orders. Once we have enough, Thompson will face daylight. Are you always this calm? Even when you want to throw chairs? I don't throw chairs. I add tasks to the list. He tapped a blank box. Protect witness. Then he looked up. You're not alone. If you notice any strange texts, someone is following me. I'm not good at comforting, but I'm good at procedure. Elena laughed. Sometimes procedure is the best comfort. It means there's a way forward. The barista dropped off food, calling, Helena and microwave? Both answered, here. Elena tore the croissant in half and slid a piece toward him. Sugar's for people who deserve it, remember. Michael studied it like evidence, then accepted. I'll take it as proof you've had breakfast. They discussed Maple further, including temporary housing during construction and solar-powered streetlights. Michael asked surprising questions. What hours will the noise be limited? How will you handle paint fumes for kids? Elena answered each one precisely. She realized the gap between dry investigator and emotional architect had quietly narrowed. Ultimately, Michael closed his notebook. I may not attend every meeting, but whenever the headlines flare up, I'll speak when needed. The rest you just do your work. So we're like two construction crews, Elena teased. You lay the legal foundation. I built the community walls. And we both check for cracks, he added. Deal, she said. The rain had stopped. They rose to leave. Elena opened the door. Damp air swept in. Do you have an umbrella? No, I've got an old IRS coat, but it's in the car. Elena pulled a rolled-up A1 sheet from her drawing tube and held it over their heads. Temporary rain shelter? Architect special. They walked quickly under the makeshift paper roof, close enough that the damp air pressed them together. Rain puddles on the sidewalk shimmered, reflecting the neon sign. Still brewing, still trying. Elena glanced up at it and smiled. Think that sign's about me? About both of us, Michael said. Still brewing, still trying. At the corner, they paused. I'm heading back to the office, he said. And you checking foundations? Yeah, Maple's waiting. She waved, then remembered. Oh, I saved your number as Michael, black no sugar. If I ever need sugar, I'll text you. Don't text Marcus, he said, half joking, half serious. I won't. Only microwave. She tapped his cup lid. Michael glanced at the scribbled name, gave a rare smile, then walked away. Elena lingered a moment, lifting the rolled plans again to shield from the drizzle. In her mind, everything suddenly felt simple. The tasks ahead, the person she could trust, the foundation that had to be poured. She opened her notebook and quickly jotted a line before the rain smudged the ink. New foundation, truth, responsibility, and the man from the airport. Then she capped her pen, squared her shoulders, and headed toward the construction site. The concrete wasn't dry yet, but the blueprint was clear. And through the sound of rain, she felt her heartbeat steady like fresh footing poured in the right measure. Still following the story? If this story found you outside of Soul Stories, we invite you home to where every touching tale begins with truth, hope, and heart. Morning at Maple began with the familiar symphony of a construction site. The whir-whir of drills, the clang-clang of hammers, the steady rumble of sand trucks like giant bees. Elena wore a yellow hard hat with a sticker reading Elena, Arch, a reflective vest, and carried a roll of drawings bigger than Mrs. Alvarez's flower vase. She loved this dusty atmosphere in a strange way. It told her that things were no longer just lines on paper. Michael arrived right on time. Gray coat, shoes already powdered with fine dust after 3 steps, notebook in hand. Elena handed him a white hard hat. Put this on. The site isn't kind to pretty faces. Michael fastened the strap under his chin. The last time I wore one of these was in a warehouse raid. Less concrete, more cardboard boxes. Here, concrete is the contraband, Elena joked, gesturing for him to follow. Welcome to the Maple Tour. They walked along Building A, whose middle unit had its roof removed, ready for the installation of solar panels. Elena pointed to a new wall section. This insulation cuts heat loss by 30%. The new drainage system runs into a biofilter in the back lot. Michael jotted notes, asking questions that were so, Michael, maximum noise threshold during construction? How are paint fumes being handled around kids? Elena answered clearly each time. Occasionally he nodded, just as he did with bank statements, only now they were surrounded by brick, steel, and wood. This is the new ramp. Elena stopped at a strip of concrete waiting to set. Slightly lower than code because Mr. Alvarez struggles to push at the standard height. I had the crew adjust the handrail too. Your drawings speak human, Michael remarked, not just numbers. What can I say? I'm used to translating blueprints into empanadas, slides, and ramps. Elena shrugged. They circled to the back lot, the future playground. Only chalk outlines marked the ground for now. Behind the temporary fence, kids from the neighborhood clustered together, eyes shining like bike lights. Miss Elena, a little girl shouted, her hair in 2 pigtails, a grumpy cat t-shirt on. Does the slide have a roof yet? It does, Marin. And there's even a non-slip hopscotch grid, Elena answered. But I need more ideas. Come on in. Careful, this way. The crew stepped aside to give the junior design team space. Elena spread a sheet of A1 paper on a wooden table and laid out colored markers. Okay, one at a time. Whoever's got an idea, draw it here. Just no setting the site on fire. The kids gasped in unison, then swarmed like bees to blossoms. A curly-haired boy sketched a dinosaur-shaped slide. Marin drew a rain canopy with tassels like a dance skirt. Another boy scribbled a phone charging station. For after we play and need to watch videos. Elena watched the page fill up. Her heart warmed as if rubbed with balm. Months ago, if anyone doodled on her drafts, she would have bristled. Today, she handed over pens herself. Who's good at hopscotch grids? Help me here. Make box number 7 twice as big, it's lucky. Michael stood nearby, hands braced on the table to keep the sheet from flying, bending low to match the children's height. A boy eyed his white hard hat, Then the coffee cup lid with the barista's mistaken scribble from last time. Microwave. Uncle Microwave, the boy declared. The kids burst out laughing. Michael blinked, then shrugged. Fine. Uncle Microwave will keep the paper down. Draw something, Uncle. Marin shoved a green marker into his hand. I don't draw well, he resisted. That's okay. Draw a heart, Marin decreed like a judge. Michael slowly drew a square. The kids howled. That's not a heart. It's a corner of refuge, Elena jumped in quickly. A place to sit if it rains, or if you're sad. He nailed the concept. She glanced at Michael. He caught her eye, a faint smile tugging at his mouth, a rare flicker of warmth. Soon the sheet became a forest of doodles. Dinosaur slides, tassel roofs, whale-shaped benches, bike racks shaped like grumpy cats. Elena added by hand, corner of grace with climbing vines. Michael studied the messy collage. His voice dropped low just for Elena. This is living architecture. Elena turned to him. What do you mean? Blueprints that breathe, he said. They change when touched by the people who'll use them. Not locked down by an architect's ego or an investigator's habits. He pointed to Marin's tassel canopy. I see Seattle rain falling and kids still laughing. I see Alvarez breathing steadily in that corner. That's a blueprint, with people. The words landed like bricks set in place. Elena had chased fame, awards, glowing headlines about green design, and groundbreaking ideas. No one had ever told her about a blueprint that breathes. No one had stood beside her, holding the page, and noticed the tiny rhythms of life hidden in it. A child asking for shelter, an old man needing a handrail. Miss Elena, the curly-haired boy tugged her hand. Can the dinosaur slide have glowing eyes? If we use solar lights, yes, Elena said, jotting it down. But not too scary, okay? Not scary, just cool, he declared. The crew chuckled, watching. A worker nodded. Been in construction for 15 years. Never seen a drawing that the whole block adds to. Well, Elena smiled gently. Today you have. She lifted the page, taped the edges, and layered plastic sheets for temporary rainproofing. Then she posted it next to the technical plans on the project board, serious as if filing a permit. Community Draft, version 1.0. V 1.0, Michael asked. Updates to come, Elena winked. Like software. Architecture, too. Breathing means updating. By noon, sunlight flickered across damp concrete. The kids dispersed for lunch. Marin darted back, pressed a strawberry lollipop into Elena's hand. For you. Sugars for people who deserve it. Then she ran off, leaving Elena chuckling softly. Michael closed his notebook. I have to get back to the prosecutor's office. We'll probably request another subpoena. Go on, Elena said, brushing dust from his hard hat without thinking. As for me, I need to pitch funding for glowing dinosaur eyes. Michael touched the corner of the community draft. Keep this one. Don't make it too clean. I'll laminate it. Keep it alive, Elena replied. They walked to the gate together, the wind carrying the scent of fresh wood and mortar. Elena felt strangely lighter, yet steadier. Since the community meeting, she'd felt many gazes. Curious, pitying, supportive. But Michael's gaze was different. Not raised to put her on a pedestal, not lowered to pity her. It set her level, a person doing her work. At the gate, Michael removed his hard hat and handed it back to the attendant. You know, he said slowly, I'm used to looking at numbers. But today I learned something new. Numbers can't draw a smile under a wide enough roof. Elena laughed. Wait until you see the dinosaur eyes glow. I'll be there. Dinosaur inspection day. He took a few steps, then paused. Elena. He rarely said her name so directly. If anyone says anything else, text me. I'm not good at comfort, but I'm good at shutting people up with evidence. Sometimes, Elena replied, lifting the community draft version 1.0 sheet. All it takes is someone standing beside the page. She tapped the corner. You hold this side, Microwave. Michael shook his head, smiling a rare human smile. Copy that. Holding the corner. He left. Elena stayed, looking at the site as if at a living body. Piles, steel, concrete, wires, and the messy doodles of children. She slung her hard hat on her arm, tilted her face to the wind. For the first time, she felt seen in a new way, not as an award-winning architect or a tabloid victim, but simply as Elena, a woman rebuilding foundations, laughing in the rain, and handing over pens so kids could add to a shared dream. Her blueprint was breathing, and maybe so was her heart. The Maple construction site glowed in the late afternoon light. Elena had just finished a meeting with the engineers and was rolling up her drawings when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered, and the voice, sharp as an old knife, cut straight into her chest. "Elena, it's me, Marcus." She froze. 1 second. 2. 3. Her heart skipped a beat. The voice pressed on. "I know you don't want to hear me, but please, just one meeting. I regret everything." That evening at a cafe across from the bus station, Marcus appeared. Gone was the polished suit. Now he wore a wrinkled gray shirt, tie loosened, but his eyes are still the same. Sly, skilled at milking emotions. "Elena," he said, pulling out a chair. "I was wrong. I lost control. But I truly love you. I'll return every cent if you just withdraw the complaint." Elena stayed silent, clutching her hot cocoa so tightly it nearly burned her palms. Once she had longed to hear "I love you" from him. Now it sounded hollow. Marcus lowered his voice, feigning a choke of emotion. "You don't understand. If this goes to trial, my career will be over. Neither of us gains anything. I promise I'll repay you every dollar. Just stay quiet." Elena bit her lip. Images flickered in her mind. Her small apartment cluttered with unfinished designs, clients' emails laced with hesitant encouragement. "Keep trying, Ms. Carter," and the screaming tabloid headline, "Talented architect duped in love and money." If she took the money back, maybe things could smooth over. No more pitiful stares. No more whispers in the hall. But then she remembered the kids at Maple. Marin holding out a lollipop. Sugars for people who deserve it. Michael quietly holds the community draft steady against the wind. The cafe door swung open. Michael stepped in, coat damp with rain. His gray eyes swept the room and locked onto Marcus. "Elena, are you all right?" he asked, then turned to Marcus. His tone was calm, but edged with steel. "You only want her silent, just like the victims before her." Marcus frowned, forcing a thin smile. "This doesn't concern you. This is between me and Elena." "No," Michael replied flatly. "This is about justice. And about the other women who lost everything and stayed silent." Elena shivered. His words struck the rawest nerve inside her. Marcus reached across the table, trying to take her hand. "Remember, we dreamed of building a green real estate company together. I swear, if you let this go, we can start over." Elena pulled her hand back. In her eyes, the blueprints they once sketched together were nothing more than distorted copies now. "No, Marcus," she said firmly. "I can design buildings strong enough to stand for decades, but I let my heart collapse once. I won't let you build anything on that rubble again." Marcus froze. Elena rose to her feet. "You can regret all you want, but my choice is made. I will not be silent. Not for me, not for anyone." Michael gave a slight nod and an affirmation without a word. As they stepped outside, the night wind rushed in, cold but clean. Elena tightened her coat, exhaling deeply. Michael walked beside her, silent but steady. She glanced at him, a faint smile breaking through. "You know, for the first time, I don't feel like a victim anymore. I just stood up." Michael answered quietly, "And that makes you stronger than any blueprint you've ever drawn." Inside Elena, an old chapter had finally closed, and another still shapeless was waiting to be drawn. The morning of the trial, Seattle offered rare sunshine. Elena stood at the foot of the gray stone steps, gazing up at the courthouse facade with its steady Doric columns. She smiled faintly to herself. At least today, architecture's on my side. In her hands wasn't the roll of Maple blueprints, but a slim folder of statements, emails, and pieces of evidence she and Michael had painstakingly gathered. Michael walked beside her, coat neat, black coffee in hand. He slipped her a small note, handwritten with only 3 lines. "Breathe slowly. Speak the truth. Look straight." A minimalist checklist, Elena joked, but holding it felt like holding an anchor. Courtroom 302 was cold, like a marble gallery. Marcus, or rather Edward Thompson, was already seated at the defense table. Gone were the polished suits. In their place was a dull gray outfit. But his eyes were still the same, still trying to sell the old story. I was misguided. I regret everything. Elena placed the folder on the table, her heart pounding, but her breath evened out following the checklist. Breathe slow. The prosecutor opened with numbers, transfer timelines, shell accounts, ATM data, surveillance footage. A bank investigator testified how money flowed across 3 states before vanishing at corner stores. On the screen, the flowchart resembled a spider's web with Edward Thompson at its center. Michael sat behind Elena, still as a windbreak. Each time the prosecutor matched a piece of evidence they had prepared, he gave the slightest nod, silent confirmation. Yes, the wall is rising. Next came the witnesses. 2 women described the same honeyed script. It began with a professional connection, shifted into affection, then into an investment opportunity. Elena's throat tightened, but she didn't avert her gaze when theirs brushed hers. None of us is alone anymore. Then the clerk called, Elena Carter. She stepped to the stand, hand raised for the oath. The wood floor echoed faintly under her shoes. Her hand felt cold. Checklist, line 2. Speak the truth. Miss Carter, the prosecutor asked, can you summarize what happened to you? Elena drew a breath. I met him at the airport after a business trip. We got to know each other through conversations about architecture, sustainable design, and the dream of building an honest real estate company. After a few months, he suggested I try investing in a project. I transferred money. 3 times, she turned to the jury box. And just when I thought I was laying a foundation, I was really pouring concrete into empty air. A faint murmur rippled through the room. The prosecutor displayed Marcus's syrupy, poisoned emails. Elena confirmed each one. She didn't cry. She let the words do their work. Then came the defense attorney. Miss Carter, he said softly, tilting his head, you are a capable adult, financially experienced. Weren't these transfers entirely voluntary? Yes, Elena replied evenly. Voluntary based on false information he provided. Her voice remained calm. Voluntary doesn't mean willingly walking into deceit. The lawyer smirked thinly. But there was no binding contract. There was, Elena cut in, eyes steady. A kind of contract men like him write very well. A contract made of promises. It has no title, but it binds just the same. The lawyer faltered, then shifted tactics. Do you hate the defendant? The room hushed. Elena looked at Marcus, the man who once kissed her forehead after candlelit dinners. The man who once held her hand and spoke of the future. No, she said slowly, clearly. I choose not to carry hate. I carry truth. The prosecutor leaned in for the final question. If you could tell the court the most important thing the defendant took from you, what would it be? Elena's voice was steady, sharp as tempered steel. He took my money, but he didn't take away my ability to redesign my life. The words landed clean and resonant. Behind her, Michael didn't nod or clap. He simply exhaled, very softly, like a man hearing the first nails hammer down on a coffin lid for a long-running con. The defense faltered under the weight of evidence. ATM footage, bank records, copy-pasted I love you emails. At one point, Marcus asked to speak. He tried again to paint himself as the misguided lover. I lost control. I loved Elena. I meant to repay. But his voice stumbled at love. And the jury glanced down at the stack of identical love emails sent to 3 other victims, punctuation and all. By the time the prosecutor rested, the courtroom was as silent as a site before a concrete pour. The judge instructed the jury, who filed out to deliberate. Elena sat back, palms damp. Michael leaned forward, placed the checklist before her, and circled line 3. Look straight. You already did, he whispered. The jury returned so quickly that the tension hadn't even dissipated. The 4-person stood, voice steady. We find the defendant guilty on charges of fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. A gasp came from the back. One victim covered her mouth, sobbing. Marcus lowered his head, face drained. The judge set a sentencing date. Restitution would be determined at a later time. Elena closed her eyes for 1 second, not from exhaustion, but like setting down a heavy brick. When she opened them, Michael's gaze met hers. No noise, no restraint, this time just open admiration. "Well done," he said. "You just built a wall no one can climb." Elena laughed, and finally a tear slipped free, light as misting rain. Outside, reporters waited. Today their questions weren't knives. One asked, "What would you say to others going through what you did?" Elena stood tall, eyes unflinching into the cameras. "Don't blame yourself for trusting the wrong person. If a blueprint fails, you tear the sheet and draw again. Your job isn't to be ashamed, it's to stand back up and find the right foundation." That afternoon, a local paper ran the headline, "Architect turns pain into strength." No more smudged mascara photos. Instead, they printed an image of Elena descending the courthouse steps, head high, framed by steady Doric columns. The caption quoted her words, "He took my money, but he didn't take my ability to redesign my life." Elena's phone buzzed nonstop, not pity, but gratitude. Messages read, "I read your words, thank you for speaking for me." An email from Mrs. Alvarez asked, "When do we get glowing dinosaur eyes?" A text from Marin, "Miss, today I look straight at the girl who bullies me." Elena sat on the courthouse steps, watching sunlight spill across the plaza. Michael handed her a black coffee. She sipped, wrinkling her nose. "Still bitter." "It should be," Michael said. "Court victories are never as sweet as commercials, but they're clean." Elena nodded. "And if it's clean, whatever you build will last." They rose together. From here, the city stretched out like a half-built frame, scaffolding up but ready for walls. The sun slanted golden, not making grand promises, just warm enough for belief. Michael glanced at her, half smile, half serious. "Today I learned something new." "What's that?" "That some things don't need numbers to prove, like courage." Elena laughed, wiping a slow tear. "And I learned sometimes a 3-line checklist is all you need to stay standing." They left the steps. Ahead, the city hummed open like a house frame ready for its roof. The light above wasn't blinding, but steady just enough to believe the future could be built. And Elena walked forward, lighter, stronger than ever. Her life's new blueprint was already underway. Foundation, truth. Columns, community. Walls, those who stood by her. Roof, hope. On a late weekend afternoon, Elena unlocked her private studio, a room just wide enough for 2 people to stand side by side at the drafting table, its walls plastered with yellow, blue, and pink sticky notes. On the table, sketches piled up like a small mountain, from maple project drafts to abandoned ideas. "Careful," she warned as Michael stepped in. "This is a danger zone. One sheet of paper could ruin your shoes with ink stains." Michael looked around, raising an eyebrow. "Looks like a crime scene, but with more color. The victims, time, and coffee." Elena burst out laughing, realizing for the first time how fitting that description was for her space. He didn't sit down right away. Instead, he began stacking the scattered sheets, sorting them by date. "When I investigate, I have to categorize data. Same principle here. Flowchart. Which ideas lived, which ideas died." Elena planted her hands on her hips. "Hey, don't call my drawings victims." "All right," Michael nodded, lips curved in a sideways smile. "Let's call them witnesses then. Some testify to your imagination. Some to your sleepless nights." The words made her pause. It was true that those long nights of sketching, crumpling, sketching again, all lay here, and somehow this outsider saw it right away. As they both bent down to stack another pile, Elena's hand brushed against his. Just a fleeting touch, but her heart jolted. Michael looked up, gray eyes steady, closer than she'd ever pictured. In that moment, Elena felt all her walls of defense tremble, like an old bookshelf rattling on its frame. He didn't need to say anything. The closeness itself was enough to unsettle her. She stammered, then stepped back half a pace, clutching the drawings like a shield. "I'm not ready." Michael didn't frown, didn't push. He only gave a slight nod as though he had expected it. "I understand," his voice low, calm. "A building can't be raised overnight, It needs a foundation. Time for the concrete to set. I'll wait like a foundation waiting for its walls. Elena bit her lip. The metaphor, coming from an investigator of all people, struck deeper than any comfort could. She gave a small laugh, eyes misting. Did you just compare yourself to concrete? Yeah, Michael shrugged. Stubborn, gray, and hopefully strong enough that whatever you build on it won't collapse. They both laughed real laughter, not polite, but the kind that escapes when a weight finally slides off your shoulders. When Michael left, the studio was still cluttered, but something had changed. The sketches no longer felt like proof of failure. They looked like bricks waiting to be laid again. Elena leaned against the doorway, watching his figure fade into the distance. Inside her, another wall had lowered slowly, but surely. Last week, the court delivered its final verdict. Marcus, or rather, Edward Thompson, was sentenced to years in prison for financial fraud in order to repay the money he had stolen. When the sentence was read, Elena didn't cry. She only felt as though the final door had closed. Other victims, the ones who had once emailed her in desperation, now stood outside the courthouse embracing one another. An older woman gripped Elena's hand tightly. Thank you for not staying silent. Because of you, we have justice again. The headlines in the papers no longer dripped with mockery. They called her the architect who turned pain into strength. One article even showed a picture of her smiling softly, standing beside Maple's design board. Elena read it, folded it neatly, and set it aside. What mattered most was that her heart had finally begun to heal. That morning, the sky was unusually clear, as if the city itself wanted to celebrate the day. The Maple Community Housing, once a row of decaying buildings, now stood transformed into an open, welcoming space. Playgrounds, gardens, a shared hall, and a vibrant mural wall painted by the children. Elena stood at the podium, microphone in hand, her heart beating not from nerves but from emotion. She scanned the crowd, elderly residents leaning on canes, children grinning wide at the new slide, colleagues from the field, and Michael standing quietly at the side, his eyes fixed only on her. This project does not belong to me alone, Elena began, her voice carrying steady and warm. It was built from the trust of this community, from the hands that joined together, from those who believed walls could hold hope, not just bricks and mortar. Applause burst forth. In the thunder of clapping hands, Elena felt it deep within. Her old pain had turned into strength, and she was no longer alone. That afternoon, as people drifted away, Michael offered to drive her to the airport. Elena laughed, shaking her head. Do you realize that all my life's turning points have happened at airports? I know, Michael replied, a glint of humor in his eyes. Guess it's your fate's motif. The car turned into the lot, yellow lights spilling across the wide expanse. Elena gazed out the window, memories flooding back to the night she sat there crying. Mascara streaked, feeling as though the world had collapsed. Now, standing in the same place, her heart felt steady. They stood together beside the cold metal benches. Michael didn't hold roses, nor did he pull out a velvet box. He simply turned to her, voice calm, eyes shining with an intensity she'd never seen before. I won't promise castles. I won't promise to shield you from every storm. What I can promise is to build solid walls with you. Walls you can lean on, not walls that will trap you. Elena blinked, tears spilling before she could stop them. It was almost absurd that she had spent her life designing monumental buildings, but it was this plain-spoken promise that made her heart tremble. You are... She laughed softly through her tears, voice trembling. The only man brave enough to confess with concrete. Michael gave a small shrug, lips tilting into the faintest smile. If that's the language you understand best, then it's the one I'll use. Elena held his gaze for a long time. All her defenses, doubts, and fears seemed to dissolve in those gray eyes. She drew a deep breath, then answered with a sentence that surprised even herself with its ease. I've designed enough buildings. Now, help me design a home. Michael didn't cheer or beam. He simply nodded slowly, deliberately, like an architect signing off on a blueprint that had waited too long. Then he clasped her hand, warm and steady. The airport intercom crackled, announcing a flight to New York. Travelers rushed past, the place buzzing with noise. Yet inside that small circle, Elena heard only the rhythm of her own heart, a rhythm no longer broken or fearful, but steady, pulsing with the start of something new. She leaned her head on his shoulder, letting the world spin on. Michael bent down, whispering, "This time the airport isn't where the tears begin. It's where a new journey takes off." Elena smiled through her tears, and she knew he was right. 6 months after the trial, life had taken on new colors. No more sleepless nights. Now Elena Carter stood before the mirror in a white wedding gown, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes shining bright. Jenny, her best friend, maid of honor, and unofficial project manager, adjusted the hem with a dramatic sigh. "If you keep shaking like that, the floor is going to register as an earthquake." Elena laughed, drawing a deep breath. She wasn't trembling out of fear, but out of happiness. Outside, soft music floated through the garden, where the guests were already seated. Many of them were colleagues from the architecture world, people who had witnessed her storms and resilience, and now they were here to see her begin a new chapter. The wedding was held in the garden of the small house Elena had designed herself. Nestled not far from downtown Seattle, the home was flooded with light and greenery, its glass walls opening wide to let nature become part of the architecture. Elena had once said, "I want this place not just to be a house, but a promise that it will always open to the light." At the front stood Michael in a simple deep blue suit. In his breast pocket sat a pink paperclip, a gift from the Maple Kids. His smile widened as Elena walked slowly down the flower-strewn aisle. No one spoke of the painful past. All that mattered was the present, a man who had once stood silently by her side, and a woman who had risen from ruin, now walking together. The pastor's voice carried warmly. "Today we witness not only a marriage, but two lives choosing to stand together." Elena placed her hand in Michael's. As his fingers closed around hers, she felt it clearly. At last, this was the solid foundation her heart had been searching for. The reception wasn't extravagant. The menu consisted of spaghetti, toasted bread, and hot cocoa. A playful nod that love sometimes begins with the simplest things. On the tables, instead of elaborate floral arrangements, stood small potted plants for guests to take home. Jenny raised her glass for a toast. "Elena, you once said the greatest project of your life would be a green skyscraper. But looking at today, I think that project is..." "Michael." Laughter rippled through the garden, lightening the air. Michael responded without missing a beat. "If I'm a building, I promise I'll pass every safety inspection by the head architect." Elena blushed, her heart overflowing with joy. After the wedding, they moved into the small house completely. The kitchen lights were always warm, and the dining table was always set with 2 cups, one for black coffee and one for hot cocoa. Elena's architecture studio occupied the largest room. Michael's office was stacked with case files, but now it shared space with potted plants she had snuck in. One quiet evening, after the last of the guests had gone, they sat by the wide window looking out at the night sky. In the distance, the lights of the airport blinked, planes climbing like moving stars. Elena leaned her head on Michael's shoulder and whispered, "You know, the greatest project of my life isn't any building. It's finding someone willing to build with me." Michael squeezed her hand. He didn't say much, but his eyes told her the promise was forever. A silver plane soared upward, leaving a thin cloud trail across the sky. Elena followed it with her gaze, then tightened her grip on Michael's hand. "The first time I cried at an airport. But today, I smile here, because I know I found the right journey." Michael pressed his forehead gently to hers, whispering, "And from now on, we go together." In the house filled with sunlight and greenery, laughter rose, blending with the rhythm of their hearts. This wasn't just happiness. It was a new home, the strongest structure Elena had ever built. Evening light streamed through the glass walls, casting a golden glow across their joined hands. Far away, another plane took off. But for Elena and Michael, the most important journey had already begun today.